is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Oh, here we go. And we're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects today. Guns. Guns and ammunition and the current state of affairs with guns and ammunition. And we're broadcasting, well, AM, FM, satellite, internet now. And this broadcast is live. And for the next 2 hours, USA Prepares is going to be talking about guns with our firearms instructor, Jeff Ohms. And Jeff Ohms, you've met him at the Get Prepared Expo. He's our senior USAPrepares.com firearms instructor, and he's an armorer. He's a certified M16 and AR-15 armorer, and he's the owner and founder of MOA LLC. And there's a link to Jeffrey Ohms on page 1 of USAPrepares.com. And you know, when Jeff was in Springfield, we taught a class together. He was the instructor, and I was just the range safety officer, and we taught a concealed carry class, and we offered it at $65, the lowest price in the market by far, and that was a lot of fun. I mean, we had more people than I've ever seen in a concealed carry class. I mean, there might have been other classes close to that in size, but I had never seen one, and it was a lot of fun, and we did that in Springfield. Hey, welcome, Jeffrey Ohms.
Hey, good morning, Vince. I don't know about down in Springfield, but it looks like the animals are starting to pair up and head east up this way. So we're in for a little bit of a bumpy ride up here weather-wise.
Yeah, that's what I heard. So what are you going to be doing?
Well, after our little discussion today, I'll be heading over to the People's Republic of Illinois to help enlighten them in their firearms purchasing and those kind of things. There's a show over in that side of the river, and we'll be set up over there this weekend.
Well, where's the show? Where's the show?
It's in Belleville, Illinois, at the Belclair Expo Center. It's an 800-table show. It's a good show. Always has been. A lot of quality dealers there, good folks, and unfortunately for the people in Illinois, because they get beat down by their progressive legislators so hard, they are very in tune with their Second Amendment rights and are willing to exercise them at every step of the way that they can within the bounds of the current administrative law. So we're going to do our part to help them get where they need to be.
That's awesome. Now that's it's in Belleville, Illinois. So that's Saturday and Sunday?
Correct.
Okay. And at what was the name of the
Belclair Exposition Center. It's actually a racetrack and a farm show animal. I mean, it's everything. It's in an ag area, agricultural area, so they do a little everything there. But the exposition hall itself, during the summer they have races over there and dirt track races with modifieds and sprint cars. And I don't know about you, but I love racing. So it's always a good time.
Yeah, I used to race cars when I was a lot younger, and I've blown up my AMX 390 engine 13 times.
That brings a tear to my eye. That was a fine automobile when it would stay together. The engine on those was nothing but fast.
Yeah, it was really fast when it ran, and I did blow it up exactly 13 times, and I still have the AMX right here at the farm in Missouri. And we've got two of them. We've got a red one and a blue one, but one's a 390, one's a 290, and they're really, really neat. So, hey Jeff, current market conditions with ammunition, I keep reading stories after story after story that 22 long rifles are just almost impossible to get. Is that true?
It really is, and it's not for lack of production. It's supply line and allocation policies, which has to be in place, I think, to make it fair for everyone. Although, back 6 months ago, when you could just walk in and just buy what you wanted when you wanted, it was one thing, and people didn't realize that that $15, $17 box of 22s was a cheap investment for the future. I think that a lot of people learned that lesson. It's starting to flow a little better, but you still aren't able to go in and get what you want when you want it. What we are seeing is a lot of the distributors are holding back for their bigger and better customers, which I get it, rightfully so. But by the same token, once those things even get close to a shelf, they vaporize.
Yeah.
You've got people camped out at sporting goods stores, if you will, gun shops, Walmarts, Targets, whatever, and they have an inside track. If they paid the cashier $20 to give them a cell phone or a text, hey, I got ammo coming onto the shelf, they're going to be there. It's slowing down a little bit because people are finally tired of paying too much. At 20 cents, almost 20 cents a round, I've seen 22 go for. That's insanity. So I think it's the sting is being felt, and I think people are starting to realize that if they stop, it will start to flow a little better, and everybody can kind of go back to normal.
When you say that they should have bought the ammo at $15 to $17 a box. Now, are you talking about like a 550 round milk carton? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
because let me tell you why I ask you that. I'm hearing absolutely shocking numbers. For example, I bought those milk cartons of ammunition many, many years ago, and they were $7.97 at the Chinese factory outlet. I heard about 2 weeks ago, there was a transaction where a person bought a case of them. That would be 10 milk cartons, and each milk carton had 550 rounds. So 10 times 550 rounds, $1,200, or $120 per milk carton of 550 rounds. That is extreme.
That's real extreme, and unfortunately, the good thing is they got what they needed. The bad thing is they paid a lot for it. Now, is it money in the bank? It isn't. It isn't. Most people's copper, lead, and brass have done better than anyone's 401k. They're right up there with precious metals in my book, because they sit there, they don't ask you for anything, and they don't leave a mess on the floor if you don't take them outside real fast. Well, you got 5 dogs, I got 5. We know how that is. Yours are quiet, mine are not. The coonhounds like to talk. And what's going to happen, I think, is nobody's going to feel bad, so to speak, for a while if they paid more than they probably should have. They at least have what they need, and that's the important thing. I think looking forward and moving forward, what we're going to see is we're going to have to get used to some supply line issues, and not as drastic as we're entering and facing now. But we're also going to have to see and realize that the component cost has certainly gone up at the distributor level. The cost of brass, copper, everything has gone down to raw materials. And once that Kanban style of inventory management control takes effect, all of a sudden the distributors are going, hey, I need this product. Well, the manufacturer says, hey, I can get a little bit more for it because it's costing me more. So everything kind of goes up. We'll see. I think the days of $15 box 22s are over on the shelf. I think they're probably going to go back up to around 20. Expect it when the supply lines open up. Centerfire rifle cartridges, i.e. the 5.56 223. I think we're going to have to expect living with the 40 cents or 50 cents a round pricing in what I would consider normal times moving forward. We all got used to the 35 cent a round 5.56 ammo and bought it. So I think it's just a cumulative effect in some regards, and it is what it is. Does it make it a good time to get into reloading? Well, yes and no. Yes, because you won't save any money. You'll just get twice as much ammo and shoot twice as much. But right now, components are really challenging to find, and when they become available, they're gone in a flash. I would never tell anyone it's not a good time to enter reloading, but realize that you're not going to be able to stock up on everything you need at once.
When you talk about reloading, is that the hot topic at gun shows? Because the rifles are really worthless without ammunition. The shotguns, the pistols, are all worthless, or almost worthless without ammunition. So is reloading the hot topic when people come to see you?
It's on the short list by certainly, and the guys who cater to the reloaders, who that's all they do is primer, powder, bullets, and brass. They're certainly having issues keeping their inventory levels at what they need them to be at, and people are just kind of scrambling. And the good thing is that at least there's some choices, but it's a cycle. I always tell people, look, if you're looking for 3 components, I don't care what they are. If you find one of them or 2 of them, just get it. Have them. Because by the time you wait for all 3 of them to present themselves, the first 2 are going to be gone again, and you're going to have to wait. And a lot of people have not quite embraced that mentality, and they're finding themselves frustrated because they keep saying, well, I can't get what I need. I'm like, well, what have you found? Well, I found this and this. Why didn't you get it? And finally that message is starting to seep into those folks. And we have a lot of new people in the shooting sports that have to be serviced and satisfied and supported, and they're not sure what the right questions are or what questions they should even be asking and who to believe. That's the biggest thing. We don't do reloading components. I teach reloading, but I don't offer any of those components. So I just encourage folks, if they're thinking about it, and that goes across whether it's a firearm, ammunition, loading component. If you find what you need when you want it, get it, because everything.
I remember considering buying a Dillon press and a 550, and it was maybe $350. And I thought, well, that's pretty high because you can get a Lyman for less, single stage. You can get a RCBS for less, and so I bought the single stage because I wanted to control every single aspect, one operation at a time, and I never got the Dillon, and now the Dillons are easily twice as expensive, aren't they? Oh
yeah, I bought my first Dillon in 1989, and I'm still running it. And then I got another one in 91, and those are the 2 presses I use primarily. I still use a single stage for load development, but then I translate everything over to the progressive. The nice thing about the 550 is because it's a manual index with multiple stages, you can still control every function. So,
Jeffrey Holmes is with us, and we're talking about firearms and ammunition, and we're going to tell you how you can get in touch with him. We come back on the other side of the break. Jeffrey Holmes, Senior, USAPrepares.com firearms instructor. We'll be right back. Jeff Holmes is with us, and Jeff Holmes is the owner and founder of MOA LLC Corporation in Missouri, and he teaches concealed weapons classes. He teaches tactics, and he's a certified armorer. Jeff, how would you like us to get in touch with you?
The easiest way is by email. It's MOA1911 at live.com.
Okay. MOA, as in minute of accuracy, 1911, the number 1911, as in the firearm, at live, LIVE.com. MOA 1911 at live.com. Jeff, there's a lot of discussion in the circles that I travel about the Department of Homeland Security purchasing ammunition. Now, do you think that those purchases affect the availability of ammunition to us? What are your thoughts on what are they doing with so many hollow points?
Well, that's a point of contention along. It depends on who you ask and what day of the week.
Yeah.
That whole thing is now coming out, and it's really reeking of some malfeasance on the part of the federal government and their actions. And I think it's an end run into the Second Amendment that, hey, we're going to lock up the ammunition because Americans typically won't own firearms they can't feed. That's always been the case, especially with some of the foreign military firearms that we've had access to over the years. I remember when the first AK-74s came on the market, we were virtually stonewalled because the ammo hadn't hit the shores yet.
Right.
so people weren't all on board. What happens with the whole DHS thing, I'll kind of try and keep this brief and break it down simply, but basically what they did is they let contracts out. The contracts were picked up by ATK, Olin Winchester, and several others, and they log jammed the process by saying, here's what we're going to ask for way more than we can ever use. So they said, okay, we'll honor those contracts as time permits, and that's the other thing. These contracts are on timelines. And if they don't meet the timeline, the manufacturer doesn't meet the timeline, they get fined. And they lose the potential forward-moving contract, which is their bread and butter. And speaking primarily of the law enforcement military calibers, only 13 to 18% of the total production is actually for the commercial market. The rest of it is all contract. So they can't really cut their nose off to spite their face, because at the end of the day, that's what keeps the lights on and keeps the machines running. But if they in effect have allocated or promised to the government agencies all the production, they can't really go back on that, and that's what's happened. It's kind of like having a backup contract when you're selling a house or having first right of refusal. Now, the agencies don't have to take all that ammo, and quite frankly, they really haven't taken much. But they've exercised the right so that when they run 40 caliber hollow points down the line, they have to offer them first on that contract. If they decline it, then those go into what's known as the surplus side or the commercial side, and that's where you see those contract overruns of 5.56 ammo and such like that. That's how that works. So right now what they've done is they've just basically locked production down so that they can wait. Now, these contracts are typically quarterly, so every 4 months they can say, yeah, we'll take that. And they'll take it, and then the next quarter they may say no, and then they'll let that out for supply. And that's kind of what you're seeing happening. So that's why the supply line of ammo is being so spotty, because they're taking some, leaving some more on the table, and they have the right to do that. And the contracts are written to favor the contract writer, i.e. at this point the DHS and Social Security Agency and all the rest of the alphabet agencies that are involved. So that's the effect we're having. Those contracts are now at 3 and 5 year levels. So we're going to live with this for a while, I have a feeling, unless some smaller or independent manufacturers, which are now trying to meet the demand, they're so outpaced they can't see straight, and they're all drawn from the same bucket out of the same well. So that's where we're at.
Marion Barry was the mayor of Washington, D.C. Many years ago, and I had a computer manufacturing company, and we got a call from his office. He wanted to buy probably 6 months worth of production from us. I mean, a major order. And I refused the order because I did not want to be involved with a government agency that would tell my company what to do by being a customer. And so I declined that. And that would have been 50% of the sales of our corporation. Just a thought. Jeff Holmes is with us, and MOA 1911 at live.com. Jeff Holmes is with us, and we're talking about guns and ammo and reloading. And, you know, Jeff, one of the things that really bothers me is the Division of Motor Vehicles turning over our confidential information that we've entrusted to them. They turned it over to the feds. You know, as a result, the head of the Department of Revenue for the state of Missouri resigned. Not enough. Everyone involved needs to go to jail. And we're working with some of our state representatives and the state senators in Missouri to help make those guys spend some time in jail. Are you getting discussion time with people who come to see you regarding concealed weapons classes, and are they saying, geez, I don't know, you know, those guys violated the trust and our names were sent over? My name was sent over, and so was yours, Jeff.
Sure, yeah. Mine's doubly indemnified only because as an instructor I'm on file with many counties in the state, but yeah, we are hearing a little bit of that. You know, luckily they just beginning Monday and Tuesday they actually had the subpoenas served, and the offending individuals were brought into Missouri State House and basically, you know, raked over the coals to get answers, and they're getting answers, and it's getting deeper. One of the local radio personalities in the St. Louis metro area on 97.1 Talk FM is Dana Lash. Dana is like just this most incredible. She was one of the original founders of the St. Louis area Tea Party, but she is just a firebrand, and she gets it. And I encourage anyone to listen live to her. She's on at noon every day till 3 o'clock. But Dana is on fire. She's been really pushing this agenda and talking to the legislators and keeping the gas turned up on it. And they're going after all these guys who are involved. And it's a Pandora's box. And they're finding out that not only did the Social Security Administration get this list, but so did DHS and the ATF. Allegedly, under oath, they said these records were destroyed. Now, take that as read. Whether or not it was or wasn't, I can't say. But that's the sworn testimony that they were offered. They are looking at making some changes in the legislation of the laws that are coming up, like HB 436 and some others, to make sure that this cannot happen under any circumstances, even if somebody wanted to. I think that at this time, that's probably the least of our concerns about, hey, if I get my CCW, am I going to be on a list? Well, the short answer is, yeah, you're going to be on a list. Your sheriff knows. He has to by law, which is fine. He knows who the good guys are now, and that's okay. Because as armed citizens, we are the correct response to armed criminals. We are actually more responsible than law enforcement, and we are there to help them affect their job should that time ever arise. So, keeping that in mind, having my name on that list, I'll be proudly on that list. It's okay. The violation of the trust and the cover-up, whole different matter. That's egregious behavior by our current administration in the Missouri legislature, and Governor Nixon is going to have some answers, and the Attorney General Koster is going to have to make some answers. He's blown his chance as governor of this state, and that was his aspiration. Being silent was acceptance. So.
Well, I can tell you yesterday when I was setting up for the live remote at the Doubletree Hotel with Dr. Norman Shealy, Dan Swindell, and me up on stage, I had my 45 on my side, and one of the hotel managers was with me setting up the equipment, and she was giving me the access to the network there. And she had no problem with me having my 45 on my side, none whatsoever, even open carrying. It was warm in the room, the air conditioning didn't kick on yet, and so I took my sports coat off, and there it was, right on my side, and she had no problem with it. And I think what's happening is more and more people who might have been afraid previously really like the idea that they're now protected by people who they know.
Oh, absolutely. It's becoming a lot more accepted by the masses because they see what's going on, and they realize that, well, if you're doing that, then you're sanctioned lawfully by the state and the sheriff. So you had to go through extensive background checks, training, and everything else. So you're probably one of the good guys. I'm okay with that, and they're starting to look at CCW permit holders more as an ally and an asset than an adversary, and that's a great change because those people are now starting to go, well, if my neighbor's doing that, okay, maybe I can do that, and that's what we're seeing is a lot of first-time people wanting to buy a firearm and then get the training to be responsible, and that's a good thing. That helps everybody, and it takes it countermands all the lies that the mainstream media and that 10 square miles on the East Coast keep pushing out to the masses, and it makes people stop and go, well, wait a minute, if they're not telling the truth about this, what else are they maybe not telling us the truth about? And that opens up the dialogue, and that, to me, is always a good thing. Are those folks always going to be as involved in the shooting sports and shooting lifestyle as myself or you or others we know? Maybe not. Maybe they are. But it doesn't matter. As long as they're involved, that's a good thing because they vote. That's the other thing.
Jeff, I'm hearing more and more. This is something that is kind of surprising to me. I'm hearing people who do not have firearms in their homes saying things like, well, I feel really good because my neighbor has a gun. And, my neighbor has a shotgun, or my neighbor has a sidearm. What I'm saying is, they're not saying, I feel really good because I've got my cell phone in my hand and I can dial 911. They're saying, I feel comfortable because my neighbor will come and protect me. my neighbor. And I think that's how my neighbors feel.
Well,
and that's how I feel about my neighbors, because they are armed. Is that something that you're starting to hear more of, or is it just me?
No, I haven't heard that much of that. And if I did, I think I would throw it right back on them and say, well, you're ultimately responsible for your own safety and security. So here, let's go out and let's go shooting, and maybe I can take some of the mystique out of this and show you that you too can be responsible. You and I both live in a rural type environment, and we expect our neighbors to have a mentality of I got your back, you got mine, which we all do. In the urban environment, I think the close proximity is they feel safe, but unfortunately, when seconds count, 911 is minutes away, and your neighbor is also minutes away by the time he's figured out something has gone wrong.
Yeah, if he's not at work, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And Jeff, I was in the lobby for maybe 15 minutes, and I was talking to this couple, and they're listeners to the broadcast, and they're members of the class, and I, as we were walking into the theater last night at the DoubleTree, I said, "Are you armed?" And the gentleman said, "No, but he has taken his CCW training, and he has not filed it. And his concern was because the information was given to the feds, Social Security Administration, DHS, and the ATF." And I said, "Well, look. If there's only 3 of us on the list, it's they're going to come get the 3 of us. But the more that are on that list, the harder it's going to be. So I'm on the list, and a lot of my friends are on the list, and I don't have a problem with that. I really don't have a problem with it. We're on the list anyway. I mean, we really are. The fact
that we breathe and buy gas, we're on a list.
Right. And if you've ever bought ammunition with your credit card, those purchases are tracked. Believe me, they are tracked. And if you go and visit firearms-related websites, all of this information is stored. Even if you have an Apple phone and you speak into it for a search, those searches are stored by Apple for 2 years. Believe me, our emails are intercepted and read. There are programs that read and look for specific words, and those are all entered into a database. You are being tracked. And if you think we're kidding, they now have drones the size of coins, little tiny drones, the size of large flies, and they're flying all over. So where do you think these pictures come from that we see on the news of these massacres? So we are under surveillance. We are being spied upon. And Jeff, more people are concerned about our government than they are about terrorism. More people are concerned about our government terrorizing us than what we would think would be terrorizing us.
And that sounds kind of strange, but the thing that I look at is historically, that's the American experience. That's how this country, we were born because of that. So the fact that spark is still alive, certainly gives me hope. And the more people we can embrace to that side, and you don't even have to talk about guns. Just look at the surveillance state, and they made a great beta test up in the Northeast in Boston. They basically locked down a city, and they proved they could do it. So people saw that. They saw it live, and that gave them cause for concern. And whether or not a firearm is even on the drawing board for them, it at least opens that dialogue of saying, hey, if you feel afraid, guess what? You're in good company. Back in 1774, that same thing happened, and guess what? We became a nation. So I still see a silver lining there. Maybe that's Pollyanna, but I have to believe that at some time, that spirit of 1776, still has a strong heartbeat.
Absolutely. I got a new puppy. He's an English Mastiff, and the reason I purchased him from one of our instructors, Paul Cummings. And if you want to, class, if you want to learn more about that, you can go to page number 1 of usaprepares.com under instructors. You'll see Paul Cummings, and he sells these English Mastiff puppies. He still has some if you're interested. And the reason I bought this puppy was because I wanted to train him to be in the studio with me as a protection dog. And he's turning out to be quite that. His name is Thomas Jefferson, and we call him TJ for short. And the reason this came up in my mind is because Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, John Adams, Ben Franklin, those guys were criminals. Criminals. And of the day, the king considered them criminals. We consider them heroes. Very interesting, isn't it? Jeff Holmes is with us, MOA1911 at live.com if you'd like to contact him. MOA1911 at live.com. We'll be right back. We're talking about guns, ammo, and I've got some more questions about the shortage. Jeff Holmes is with us. He's a senior USA Preparedness.com instructor. You've had a chance to see him at the Get Prepared Expos. And you've seen him at the training that we do right here in the Ozark Mountains for CCW classes. Jeff, with ammo being very, very short in supply, I noticed something that was kind of alarming to me. I heard off in the distance over the weekend blasting of what sounded like 9mm and 40 caliber and shotgun blasts. I mean, for an hour, boom, 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 over and over and over, rapid fire. And I'm thinking, why are we doing this? I mean, this ammo is so hard to get. It didn't make any sense to me. You know, what I do is I've got an AR-15 and I've got a conversion bolt for it, the same kind that you sell, and I'll shoot 22s out of it rather than the 556s or the 223s, and I have a conversion for my 45, and I will shoot 22s out of it rather than 45s when I'm practicing. What do you recommend we do in this situation? I mean, if we practice, and we use up all of our ammunition, we don't know if we can get any more, right?
Right, and that's a great point. Yeah, we should be training. Using the 22 conversions is probably still the most economical way to go about that, even though it's in short supply. And just keep the training sessions to a minimum. And like you said, hearing your neighbors in the area hammering away tells me a couple things. A, I'm glad they're getting trigger time because these are perishable skills. But B, what that tells me is, you know, how combat effective are they being when they're firing in that manner? Probably not what they should be. You can tell the guys who know what they're doing because you'll hear 2 to 3 round bursts, if you will, in semi-automatic fire. That means they're engaging properly, holding on target, and making it hits. But the 22 conversions on the ARs, the 1911s, they have them for CZs, for SIGs, for everything, is still the way to go. But there's a lot of other things that you can do that don't require the expenditure of actual live ammunition, which is still the best thing. Don't get me wrong. I mean, trigger time is always the best thing with actual rounds. You know, there was a commercial on during the break about some accessories for the Soviet-style gear, and they mentioned the Mosin Nagant rifle. Still, to this day, one of the best bargains in the firearm world. Yeah, it only holds 5 rounds. It's bolt action. But here's the thing. You can pick one of those up. It's been arsenal refinished for about $200. A tin of 440 rounds of ammo is still about $90 to $100. And
wow.
You've got a very effective rifle out to 500 and 600 yards. How effective? Well, there was a little guy from Finland during World War II that had more confirmed kills than all of the snipers of World War II combined. His name was Simo Haiha. He used a stock Mosin Nagant rifle without a scope, and he was an absolute terror on the Axis powers. So it's an effective rifle. It's a great rifle. I encourage everyone to have 1 or 2 or 5. But in the meantime, those of us that have the more modern musket, the 22 conversion is still the way to go. But there, like I said, there's other training. Work on your manual of arms. I mean, how familiar are you with the system of your choice? In the dark, under conditions, out in the rain. Can you do a fast, effective magazine change? You want to know how fast you need to be? Fire as many rounds as you can in 3 seconds. And then think about, that's probably what's incoming at you if you were on a 2-way range while you're doing a magazine change. So work on getting your magazine changes. Work on failures to extract, failures to feed, problems. Work on your sling system. Learn how to shoot around corners. I mean, all these things can be done. Learn how you maneuver in a tight space. What works for you? How much gear do you have? How little do you have? All these things. That is worth its weight in gold, and you can do that without firing a single round in a safe manner, and that will get you much more in tune with the system of your choice. It will build muscle memory, so if the time should ever have to occur that you need to use the firearm as it was intendedly designed, you will default to that level of training, and you probably will be effective and walk away from the day.
Jeff Holmes, MOA 1911 at live.com. MOA 1911 at live.com if you'd like to get in touch with him. And Jeff's going to be in the gun show. That's this weekend. It's at the Belleville, Illinois, Belclair Expo Center. That's this weekend, Saturday and Sunday. Jeff Holmes, MOA 1911 at live.com. Jeff, thanks so much for being with us. I really appreciate it. It's always great to hear your expertise on firearms. Class, above all, honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you. And coming up next, LED lighting. We'll be right back. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? This is hour number 2 of USAPrepares.com. And Dave's producing the broadcast in Minnesota at Genesis Communications Network. And you can listen to USA Prepares on AM, FM, satellite, internet, podcasts, and your smartphone. Yeah. And with me for this hour is Bert Bertonis, Silicon Valley. He's an electrical engineer. He holds a master's degree in business. He's a designer, patent holder, expert witness. He designs wireless and network communications infrastructure. Some of the largest companies in the world are his clients and customers. Welcome, Bert Bertonis.
Hi, Vince. Good to be with you again.
I got a message that you said, yeah, tomorrow, right?
Tomorrow.
Still pulling my leg after all these years, right?
Yeah, one of these days we'll have to tell your audience about some of the April Fool's jokes we've played over the years.
Well, you want to try one? We can do that right now.
Well,
you want to do that?
The best one was the surgically implanted computer bus that we said was faster than, at the time, I think the Intel MX bus was the state-of-the-art, and we said this outdoes the Intel MX bus by 17 times, easily surgically implanted by any licensed surgeon. Manual is waterproof for easy wiping, and compatible with all major software.
You're talking about you and me sitting around in the office in California, thinking about April coming up and April Fools, and we concocted this press release. It was total fiction, and it was, I believe, in 1980, April of 1980. We sent this out to all of the major publications. I'm talking about the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, Popular Science, Popular Mechanics, even Ebony Magazine back then. And we sent this out, and we said that and we talked about, and we spelled our names backwards. You were J. Sinotreb, which is Bertonis backwards, and I was V. Ilinef, which is Finelli backwards. And so we claimed that we invented this technology, and it was unveiled at the Walter Reed Army Hospital. And it had a manual that surgeons could easily understand, and it alluded to this device being implanted in your body, and it would allow you to receive satellite communications signals. And you would be the participant. You could pick the character that you wanted to be. Now, class, remember, this is 1980. That's a long time ago. And so, if you've seen some science fiction videos and movies, we did it way before that. So we said that this device could be implanted, and and I believe we even talked about stress testing, because if you picked that you wanted to be a character that was an action character, you could die. You could die by being that character if you couldn't stand the stress of being that character. So we then we sent this thing out, and the phone didn't stop ringing. Right?
That's correct.
People. Oh boy! Now people are gonna know what I'm really like, right? And what you're really like. Yeah, we sent that out, and people thought we invented anti-gravity, and they wanted to be part of us. They wanted to help us, and we were kind of stunned, because it was just an April Fool's joke. And then 10 years later, it surfaced again as great claims that failed to materialize, right?
Yeah, no, it's well. The funny thing is, the joke has evolved, but it's getting closer to real life, because now we're actually at a point where medical science and electronics are starting to merge in terms of very small microcircuits, nanotechnology, and it could be, in 100 years or maybe less, the computer of the future will be a biocomputer.
It's interesting you say that, because yesterday, now you haven't met Norm Shealy yet, Dr. Norman Shealy. He's about 80 years old, and he and I were broadcasting together at the Doubletree Hotel yesterday afternoon in Springfield. He has a broadcast. He talks about medicine, natural medicine, and he's been doing this for about over 2 decades. And we're getting ready for the broadcast, and we're on stage, in the theater, Tree Hotel in Springfield. And Dan Swindell he's one of our instructors, and Norm Shealy was there, and I was there, and Norm Shealy, like 5 minutes before the broadcast, Norm Shealy says to me, "Do you see my headband?" And I said, "Yeah, right over there." So he puts this headband on. And they're leads coming from the headband to a battery pack. So he's wearing this device, and I'm going to ask him about it next Wednesday on the air. So he's wearing this device that has either a transducer of some kind or an electrode of some kind that is directly around where a headband would be. 2 of them, one in the front, one in the back of his head. And he's a brain surgeon. So very interesting. So when you talk about medicine and electronics becoming closer and closer together and integrating the two, you're absolutely right. You are absolutely right. So, and he's an expert in this. So today I'd love to talk about lighting. Now, Bert, you've been to the farmhouse here in Missouri. You've come from California, and you've seen our kitchen. And so I'd like to use our kitchen as an example. Class, in our kitchen we have 11 recessed lights. Some people call them can lights because they look like a can upside down, a large number 10 can in the ceiling. And you'd screw in ours, you would screw in a standard E27 base bulb, which would be like a 100-watt light bulb or a 60-watt, incandescent light bulb. And the reason that we're talking about this is if I screw in a 100-watt light bulb, the can itself will get so hot that the thermal circuitry will shut off the light, because of the potential fire from the heat from this light bulb, the incandescent 100-watt light bulb. So you scale down to a 60-watt light bulb, and the light bulbs will last a very short time, maybe a month. So that's unacceptable. And they use a lot of electricity. So then what I did was I said, all right, well, let's put one of these 26-watters compact fluorescent light in there, and really works really well for about a month. And they burn out, maybe at the absolute most 2 months. So they cook themselves, they overheat, and they don't last very long. So I switched to a 13-watt compact fluorescent light. Now, less light comes out of them, but they last a lot longer. And I have observed that there's a relationship between the heat of the bulb, whether it be compact fluorescent or incandescent, and the life expectancy. The hotter they run, the shorter they last. Bert, what do you agree with that?
Well, that's not too hard to believe. And yes, I do believe what you're saying is true. In fact, in electronics, we do what's called accelerated life testing. So we have a product that, for instance, we say we expect to last 10 years. But, how the heck can we test it for 10 years? We want to sell it next month. So we do what's called accelerated life testing in a heat chamber, and there's a curve for every product, more or less, where by raising the temperature so many degrees, you've created this % of increase in life. And if you do it hot enough and your product is designed that it can work at those hotter temperatures, then you can, say, do maybe 2 years of equivalent life in a couple of days, for instance. And I'm just pulling those numbers out of the air. But the reason is, as things get hotter, they do wear out quicker. So that's absolutely true. And, of course, all that heat is just wasted energy. Unless it's the winter, then maybe you wanted to heat your house. But typically that's just wasted energy. So absolutely there's a correlation to that. And what's good is we were talking about advanced technologies of the future. Well, LED lighting is something that is now available. It is was one of those future technologies. And Vincent, just the almost year that we've been talking about LED lighting on your show, I have good news that prices have come down another 1/3 to 1/2. So LED lighting right now is more affordable than ever.
Well, I'll tell you what, I did some experimenting, and the last broadcast we were on, I had purchased on eBay some 3 LED surface-mounted device, 9-watt total, E27 base lights. So basically, they screw into a normal fixture, and they're like a little flood lamp, if you will, that you might have outside, but they're smaller. And the whole device is like the size of a billiard ball, but it's shaped with a reflector on it, kind of a triangular shape, if you will, or a cone shape. And I screwed them in, and they lasted 1 day. 1 day. And I thought these LED... No, these are
110.
110. 110.
Okay.
And they were so hot, literally, that you could not unscrew it and hold it. And I'm thinking, man, LEDs are, normally run really, really cool. You can't even feel the heat from them. And these things were so hot that you couldn't touch them. So the point is, they were, $3 or $4 a piece, and they didn't last longer than 1 day. So I said, this isn't going to work. So I unscrewed them, and I thought, okay, there's got to be another solution. What would that be? So I thought, I'll tell you what I thought when we come back. And I'd like to review this design with Bert Bertonis, a electrical engineer, Silicon Valley, SeniorUSAPreparedness.com instructor. We'll be right back. Bert Bertonis is with us, and we're talking about LED lighting. And I wanted to share with you something that I'm working on. As I said, in our kitchen, we have 11 recessed lights, or 11 can lights. And if we put 60-watt light bulbs in them and we turn them on with one light switch, that'd be 660 watts of power consumption, which I think is pretty considerable for a kitchen. I think that's, a lot of power consumption. And we've replaced those with 26-watt bulbs, but they didn't last very long, the compact fluorescents. And that used less than half of the current, but the bulbs cost 4 or 5 times as much, and they don't last worth a darn, so that wasn't a good solution. So I went down to the 13-watt light bulbs, which, use about 1/4 the electricity, which I like that idea, but the bulbs still only last 2 years, typically at the most. And that's because they're upside down, and the electronics, the heat rises in these cans, and the electronics get hot and they cook. So I think that's what's going on with these bulbs. So now I wanted to get past that and put in LEDs, and I thought that'd be the solution, but it's not, because they run so hot upside down in the can lights, because the base of the light is up and the light bulb is down and heat rises and they cook. So I thought, okay, I'm going to win this no matter what. So I thought about buying these strips of LEDs. And what they are is surface-mounted devices on a flexible circuit board. And it's like a ribbon, a half-inch wide, Bert. And what I want to do is mount those, glue them to a piece of trim board, 1x2 trim board that I want to put around the ceiling, so that I'd have uniform lighting. Our kitchen is 30 feet by 16. So it's a fairly large kitchen. And we spent a lot of time there. So I wanted to put these strips of furring strips, if you will, or 1x2s, paint them to match the trim color in the kitchen, which is kind of an off-white, and attach these LEDs to it, and then power them with 12 volts, because they are 12 volts. They cost about $1 a foot. That's all. And theoretically,
I'm
they
paying
should.
them for about $10 for 300 on Amazon right now.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's exactly right. Yep, you can get about 5 meters, or a little over, about 16 feet, for less than $16. So less than $1 a foot. So I'm thinking for $200, I can put these LEDs in most of the rooms of our farmhouse. On furring strips, which, is very inexpensive. So assuming I have the paint, assuming I have the sheetrock screws to screw these into the ceiling, because I don't want to glue. All of our ceilings are textured, so I can't just stick them on the ceiling, and I don't think it would look good anyway. And if it doesn't work, I want to remove it. So that's why I want to use the furring strips. So what do you think? Do you think it'll work?
Not a bad idea. I think it'll take a little getting used to, because it's a different type of lighting. It's a more consistent lighting across the whole ceiling, but nothing wrong with the idea at all. And I assume you're probably going to connect it up at 12 volts with a separate circuit rather than the normal bulbs that work at 110.
Right. What I would do is calculate the maximum power consumption of all of the lights running at the same time. So let's say the kitchen, let's say the great room, let's say the office upstairs, and some of the bedrooms in the hallway. Figure out what the maximum load in watts is, which is really going to be very low, and then have a 12-volt power supply, let's say in the garage, a ventilated power supply. Plug that into one of our circuits on the electrical circuit panel, and run 12-volt wiring to each of the rooms that has the LED lights, and use a standard on-off switch to power them. So we're talking about 12-volt wiring to run each one of these rooms. Now, I wish I had done this in the construction of the house to make it a lot easier, but I wanted to experiment in the kitchen first. So the plan is to use grid power, utility power, all the time, except when there is a power failure, or if the grid goes down, no big deal. I will just use my 12-volt marine batteries that are connected to a solar panel to charge the batteries during the day, and use the LED lights at night. So please give me your critique when we come back on the other side of this break of that design, and how about some tips from an engineering standpoint. Bert Bertonis, we'll be right back. Well, I just got outbid on eBay. I just launched a bid to buy another 5 meters of these lights, and I got outbid, so I'm back on the air, so I don't have time to buy some more, but I will after the broadcast. And Bert, here's what I looked at. I looked at two different technologies. One's called the 50/50 surface-mounted SMD LEDs, and the other is the 3528. So, can you review this design that I'm proposing doing at the farmhouse? What do you think, and how can we make it work, and how can we make it work well?
Well, I think it's fine. You need to scale how much power that you're using. So these lights are typically about 5 watts per meter. So if you're looking at your 5-meter length on the typical spool, that's only about 24, 25 watts. So make sure that the power you're planning to use is appropriate for that. There's nothing wrong with using a 12-volt battery system that can be charged. A lot of solar and wind equipment in the past was designed for 24 volts, which is unfortunately twice what we need for these lights. But a lot of solar and wind chargers and controllers are now being able to work at both 12 or 24 volts. So if you're going to hook this up for your solar and or wind power, it's best to get a controller that can work at 12 volts. And like I said, a lot of the newer models now, they're switchable 12 or 24 volts.
Okay. So can you give us a feel for the diameter or the gauge of the wire? So let's say in my particular application, I want to run some wire from the power supply in the garage over to the wall switch that I'm going to install, and then from there to up the wall and to the ceiling for these LEDs. So let's say I'm going to be running 100 feet of wire. What gauge should we consider if I'm going for each 25 watts?
Well, you're catching me off guard for the exact calculation, but I would say
just roughly.
14 or 16 gauge should be fine. One idea would be pretty much the smallest gauge outdoor lighting wire, which is 12-volt wire designed for the Malibu type lights. The smaller of the two gauges of that should be fine. Remember, those bulbs are typically incandescent bulbs, drawing a lot more current than these lights are going to draw. So that should be adequate. Or even speaker wire could work. Because it's 12 volts, there's no real UL requirement in terms of insulation or any of those things that you would have at a 110-volt wire.
Yeah, no, I realize I'm putting you on the spot, but so what we're talking about though is for 25 watts, we're not talking about using very heavy cable, and I'm glad you mentioned speaker wire because that's exactly what I was planning to use. As a matter of fact, what I was planning to do is put a cut with a table saw on the back side of the LED furring strip so that I can run cables to the next strip of LED lighting. So all low voltage, and I'm going to put a fuse in there. I'm going to use an automotive fuse for the right amperage. And can you share with us the formula for watts? So if we have, for example, let's say we want to fuse a 25 watt strip at 12 volts, how many amps should we consider putting a fuse on there?
So I'm glad you mentioned amps, because really it's the current or the amps that determine what diameter cable you use. So just to give you the analogy for your house wiring, when you are running 110, everybody knows that 12 gauge is what you use in a 20 amp circuit. 14 gauge is typically used in your 15 amp circuit. So really you need to think in terms of current when you're scaling the wire. But again, for these 12 volt lights, we're talking about such small current. I mean, so if we figure if it was 12 watts and 12 volts, that would be 1 amp. And if you had, say, 25 watts, which might be a whole strip of these lights, we're probably talking and again, if this was all wired on the same circuit, they are cuttable, so you can do them in any number of threes. But still, we're only talking about 2 amps there. So you could see that in that case, even 14 gauge is complete overkill for that type of application.
Yeah. So we're talking, what Bert said was 12 volts at 1 amp is 12 watts. And 12 volts at 2 amps is 24 watts. And these strips of lights that I'm talking about are about 24, 25 watts for a spool of it. And the spool is about 5 meters or 16 feet. So, Bert, are we saying that we would be comfortable, I guess, would we use a 3 amp fuse for 24 watts, 50% over? Would that be what you'd recommend? Or what size?
Or even higher, even a 5 amp fuse, because it's either going to blow or it isn't. So, 5 amp fuse would be fine.
Okay, so there you have it. So you can, sounds like you can safely use a 5-amp fuse for this 12-volt lighting for one spool of 5 meters of lights, which would consume 24 watts. So that's great. I think you've given us a lot to think about. And, all of this is relatively inexpensive to do. So I'm looking right now, there's a spool on eBay. Let's see, free shipping, $5.70 for the LEDs. You'll have to get some furring strips if you want to do it the way I'm going to do it. So, for $20 for everything, you can have 16 feet of LED lighting. I think that's a great experiment. I think it's worth trying. Do you agree? By the way, is this something you might want to try at your place in California?
Sure, but I wanted to add that they would need a power supply. Even if you're just using a battery, you're going to want to charge that battery. So there is either a controller or just a very simple 12-volt power supply that you can buy for these that you need to add to that price.
Okay, and what would we? Do you have a feel for what a power supply might cost for a let's say a 25, 30, 50 watt power supply?
Yeah, well, it could be a wall wart. So $5, $10, for a small one. Depends if you get into the controllers now that are designed for solar and wind power, you could be talking of $100 or a couple of $100, but those are generally more elaborate, and the best of those will also allow you to convert your solar or wind power into 110 volts. So not only can you charge batteries and store the power in batteries, you also have the option to convert it to 110, and then that voltage can either be used to power 110 volt circuits in your house, or I know we can do this in California, sell it back to the power company.
Well, I'm really excited about doing this. I'll tell you why. The alternative that we have when the power fails here at the farmhouse is to go fire up the generator, or light some kerosene lamps, or light some candles. Now, kerosene lamps and candles, both, and we have a pretty tight house, so there's not a lot of air leakage. So any of the smoke or any of the fumes, you can smell it all over the house. So I don't want to do that. And I like the idea of not polluting the air inside the house. And I like the idea of being able to use the same lighting when the times are good as when the times are bad. So to me, I think this is really a worthwhile experiment. And I'd like to, and maybe what I'll do is I'll put some pictures on the internet of how this worked and the cost involved and so forth, and maybe I'll do a YouTube video or something like that. But I think it's going to work. Now, have you done any research on the different kinds of LEDs, the colors of them, and what you recommend? I know that you're a big proponent of full spectrum lighting. For as long as I've known you, you've felt that if you have the wrong degree Kelvin lighting, you won't feel as well. Your body will not be as healthy as if you have full spectrum lighting. So how do you feel about cool white versus warm white LEDs?
Sure. Well, the cool white is usually referring to full spectrum, and it is healthier for you. There's been a lot of research, in particular Dr. Ott, who has written books on it and was the guy who did the original time-lapse photography for Disney. So it is better to use full spectrum, which is typically called cool white. A lot of people are used to regular incandescent bulbs, which are about 2,700 degrees, and they do make the LEDs in that temperature. The interesting thing is they're actually less efficient. So when they try and make the LEDs look like your old-fashioned light bulb, your efficiency goes down about 25 to 30%. So really, I think the cool white's the best. It takes a little getting used to. Some people say, oh, they look blue. Well, really, they're not blue. They're neutral, but compared to a regular light bulb, they just appear to be blue. You can also get the LED strips in all different multiple colors. So if it's child's room or a party room, or even you can just have the switches so that you only switch in the colored lights when you want to have a festive occasion. That's another option, because you can buy them with multiple colors on the same strip or strips of individual colors.
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is called a 50-50 SMD. 50-50. I think it stands for the size of the actual surface-mounted LED, and on that there's a red, a blue, and a green, and you can turn on. There are 4 wires, a common wire, and then there's a wire for red, and then one for blue, and then one for green. So you can turn on just the green, or just the red, or a combination of 2 out of 3, or all 3. And if you turn on all of them, I believe you get white light, right?
Sure, but you'd be better off just using your regular white LED to achieve that. Really, whatever you want, though. I mean, it's whatever strikes your fancy. I think in the future there's going to be more of this in new home construction. There hasn't been a standard yet on what type of controllers and switches. Of course, you could use all your standard AC switches. They'll work fine. They're just overkill when we're talking about 12-volt circuits.
There you go. Bert Bertonis, we're talking about LED lighting, and we'll talk about life expectancies when we come back on LED lighting. Bert Bertonis of Infinelli, USAPrepares.com. We'll be right back. I was just thinking about back around 1980 when Bert Bertonis and I launched that bogus press release, and got picked up. It got picked up by a lot of major publications, and they actually it just kind of shows you how the media can just run with something without verifying that it's accurate. And we actually claimed that we invented something that we did not invent. And shoot, people wanted to invest in our company, and they thought, man, oh man, they should do this because we invented this thing. And you know what's really funny, Bert? When people were calling us, they were talking all around it. You know, hey, you want to come see you guys and come see your operation there in Silicon Valley? And boy, I hear you guys doing great stuff and want to meet you. But they talk all around it. But they wanted to join us. They wanted to profit from this concept that they thought was real, right?
That's correct.
And I saw the 10-year anniversary of that great claim. We won second prize with great claims that failed to materialize. Right? Apple won first prize. We won second prize. Right?
Yeah, and I've done variations on that over the years. The latest being a wireless LAN that, as wireless LAN access points have gotten smaller and smaller, we did the ultimate wireless LAN, which is surgically implanted right inside your head. And the only thing protruding was a small little rubber ducky.
You did that?
We did that. And I actually had someone at my ISP provider at the time wanting to, we said there was going to be a seminar in 2 days, and wanting to get front row seating and see if he could represent the company.
Oh, man. When we did that in 1980, we were just sitting around and thinking, I don't know, maybe we had ADHD or something, but maybe we were bored. I don't know, but it was fun. I mean, picking on the largest publications in the world at the time and having them run with it. It was beyond belief.
Well, you would think they would recognize the April 1st date up at the top of the press release, but it's amazing how many people don't think about that.
By the way, do you still have a copy of that? If you do, can you scan that, and I'll just post it on the website so people
I'll have to look, because we didn't have email back then, so I'll have to go through actual paper files. So it might take some time.
Yeah, I know I have it somewhere. I do. It might be. I'll ask Mrs. Finelli to find it. But I've seen the the anniversary issues of the 10-year, and I think wasn't there a 20-year mention of us, and the great claims that failed to materialize.
I do have the Fat Guide front page interview with us that also featured another famous company that went on, is still in business. I won't mention their name, but I have a few copies of that SAT Guide.
Oh, yeah, Satellite Communications Guide?
Yeah.
We were on the front page?
Lloyd Covens did.
Yeah, I remember. I remember that. That was pretty neat. Yeah, that was the early days. We were in our 20s back then. Yep. Okay. Well, Bert, how can we make LEDs last longer? Do you have a suggestion for that?
Yeah, I think you might have gotten from a bad supplier, because a lot of times what people will do is juice up the current higher. I remember I ordered some bulbs for a car once, and I'll tell this just real quick. I mean, they were 10 for $1, and I'm thinking, how could you sell light bulbs 10 for $1? But they were little tiny LEDs, and they put too much current through them. So buy your LEDs from a reputable store, and generally they will now have very long life.
Bert Bertonis, Vin Finelli, USAPreparedness.com. Class, above all, honesty and integrity. I'm just thinking about that press release. But that was a joke. Honesty and integrity. What happens next is up to you. Bert, hey, thanks so much for being with us.
Thanks, Vince.